Welcome to Lightning Strides Podcast. I'm your host, Tony Lewis, and today we're excited to have on Anthony Bambara, head boxing coach and co-owner of Combat Fitness. Anthony brings over 20 years of experience to the table. He has a background in exercise science, a knack for strength and conditioning. He's worked with pros. He's helped shape the sport. I've also had the pleasure of working with Anthony myself. He played a key role in designing my strength regimen for my last fight. So without further ado, let's dive in. Anthony, thanks for joining us, brother.
My man, I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, man.
Like I said, it's been like 5 years since I've been up in Canada. Came up, got a fight in last night, and I'm happy. We got a win, and now I get to hang out and chat with you. Talk boxing, let's do it.
I was going to say congratulations on order, and we can't talk about it because you did win.
Yes, thank God. Yeah, we don't have to tiptoe around me getting flatlined last night, right? That's good. I'm very happy.
How you feeling?
Happy. I feel great. I feel great. I always get nervous, like you said, you always compare me to Rocky Marciano. I like that little Joe Frazier, Rocky Marciano kind of pressuring middle distance style. And I'm always scared I'm going to run into a guy who's a mover. So I was happy that I could catch the guy. I could keep him on the ropes and get the job done.
But there is a science to it though, because it does, on the surface it looks a little brutish and one-dimensional, but like The Rock in his time, He wasn't just a one-dimensional. He was not as easy to hit as he thought. He'd keep his head on the outside line, weight on that back leg. He would take his head out when he launched that right hand where he wasn't in line to get hit with yours. Like a lot of subtle things he did that he didn't get credit for. And I see that in you.
Thanks. Yeah, people underrate, the way that I think about boxing. I talk about this a lot on my channel. The way that I think about boxing is I think about it as a martial art. I try to separate the sport out of it. The sport's important because we got to practice, but it's a martial art. God forbid you're ever in a self-defense situation or something like that. Those big gloves that we use nowadays with the attached thumb and everything, you can hide behind your high guard. Mm-hmm. But back in the day, you used your left shoulder to protect you from their right hand and use your right hand to catch their left hand. And I really try to do that as much as I'm able to, safely.
And then the thumbs were more mobile,
yes.
So they could do a lot of things where they can manipulate the arms and gloves.
They can hold the wrists, and they could get the bicep ties a lot better. They could also poke each other in the eye, but we don't talk about that.
Right. Real dirty boxing back then.
Real dirty boxing.
But so you just touched on a little bit the way you viewed the sport when you coach. So that brings me to my first question is, so first off, how did Combat Fitness come to be, and what's the core to your coaching philosophy?
Yeah, so Combat Fitness is an MMA gym. Let's start there, And I had the opportunity to buy Combat Fitness in 2016. And at the time, I was working as the head strength and conditioning coach at Bob Miller's pro boxing camp. And that's where you and me met and started rubbing shoulders, started taking chunks out of each other. And I had the opportunity to buy the gym. And I talked to Bob about it, and Bob said, you're never going to make any money working for somebody else. He said, if you want to make a living in this sport, he said, you need to own the gym, So we bought the gym, and because it was an MMA gym, I really had to think about the boxing differently, because I had to think about the boxing in a way where it's damage first. And it's not a sporty, bouncy, Soviet or Olympic style boxing. It's a damage first game so that I could help to teach the kickboxers or teach the MMA guys a style that would work for them as well. And that's really changed the way that I box. Because, I spent a lot of time doing clinch rounds and doing jiu-jitsu and doing kickboxing and stuff like that. And even though I focus on the boxing's my first love and my last love. Mm-hmm. I always try to keep those things in mind when I'm coaching it. And that's one of the reasons why, like on the YouTube channel, we don't always talk about techniques. We talk a lot about tactics and strategy and principle. Because if you understand things like managing distance, things like punch position, things like traffic, whether it's your hand or whether it's your shoulder, then you can use a lot of different techniques to slot in to accomplish those things. And that's where your style comes in. Different guys are going to have different styles that let them succeed there, I
think that's one thing where I see a lot of coaches struggle too. Some coaches, because they got the one style preference they like that they teach, and they want to teach everybody. But you can't teach the tall, lanky kid the same way you're teaching the shorter, compact.
That's right.
You got to go with their their individual genetics and body types too. Whenever you're looking to build a skill set,
it's true, and you got to think about their psychology too. Bob used to say that. Where he would say, even if a guy's big and tall and long, if his predilection is to move in and throw back and throw hard, then you got to lean into his psychology, because that psychology is going to matter more when the pressure's on than anything else. You look at a guy like a Tommy Hearns. Tommy Hearns is an attacker. He's not sticking and moving and running away just because he's long.
He could stick and move.
He could.
But he had the ability to press and attack too. But then, or even Diego Corrales, for instance, he had the height. But a lot of people, they look at height, they forget that height doesn't always correlate with reach. Because
true. If
you watch Mayweather and Corrales, pay attention to the measurements and actually watch the fight. Mayweather had longer arms than Corrales, even though he was the shorter guy.
Mayweather's got longer arms than I do.
He's got abnormally long arms for his height.
Yeah,
he's got long arms.
He's got a good build for boxing.
Yeah. So he actually had longer arms than Corrales. So, but in that's why Corrales was so sharp on the inside.
Yep.
You watch his fights with Castillo and other fights because his arms allowed him to work in the pocket even though he was tall.
Yeah, we talk a lot about like compounding reach, where like straight off the line of your shoulders is where it's going to maximize your reach. If you're punching up, you're shortening your reach. But if you're a small guy, you can shorten a long guy's reach by making him punch down and by opening to the body. Yeah. So if you look at Mayweather Corrales, one of my favorite fights for tape study, you can really see that Mayweather opens to the body and just like The Rock, we were talking about, he gets extra low so that Corrales has to come to him and shorten his reach. Yeah. And then Mayweather uses that, drawing him in to set up that jab to the body and then that left hook to the head. Beautiful work.
Absolutely. Also, so again, I touched on in the intro, you have a background in exercise science.
Yes.
So how does your background in exercise science influence your training methods?
That's a fascinating question that I talk to a lot of my athletes about. I'll be honest with you, a lot of what I learned in college, I have had to unlearn. Because combat athletes are so different, The exercise science industry is so heavily influenced by Olympic sports and powerlifting and American football that I think sometimes they sacrifice longevity and skill development for short-term performance. And if you're a combat athlete, something that I would never be able to do is I would never be able to coach other boxers appropriately in their S&C if I wasn't a boxer. Because I can guinea pig on myself and I can feel the return on different things.
Right.
If you're a boxer, you got a funny set of attributes that you need to be good at. You need to be bouncy with your feet. You need to be explosive with your hips. You need to have an extremely strong core. You need to have really mastered that stretch reflex on your shoulders. It's an odd sport to train, and you really got to like Frankenstein monster a lot of different principles together to be able to work with a boxer. And I've seen coaches in the past, I've seen their programs online and everything like that, and they got these guys doing 5x5s on like heavy squats and heavy deadlifts, and they're like, oh, if you get stronger, you're going to get faster. Like from a cellular perspective, yes. A muscle that can exert more force can exert force faster. But you need to learn to relax to be fast, know? I used to roll my eyes at all the old school coaches when I was a kid that would be like, oh, you want to knock guys out, you need to work on your technique, you need to work on your skill. Yeah. And I'd be like, shut up, old man, I'm a bench 315, all right, watch this. But those old school guys are all right. You need to learn how to relax. You need to take it seriously. You need to condition yourself to be a good athlete. But learning to relax, learning to be speedy, learning to weaponize that stretch reflex is really the thing that when it comes to conditioning.
Relaxed muscle is a stronger muscle.
That's right. A lot of these, you look at like a big bodybuilder or something like that, undeniably a bodybuilder can exert more horizontal force than a boxer can. So why do they all hit like a bunch of powder puffs? They hit like a bunch of powder puffs because they're pressing the gas and the brake at the same time. That tension slows them down,
And I think too a lot of times guys with tight muscles that are wound up like that, they're not getting enough oxygen to those muscles.
So that's
why they fatigue quicker too. A lot of bodybuilders that I've seen come into my gym over the years, even in my youth, they're gassed after like 30 seconds to a minute in the round. Right. They look like the gods. Yeah. They look like Greek gods, but they gas out because they get all the lactic acid builds up so fast.
Of course.
Because they can't relax.
And that's not me talking smack about bodybuilding. It's just talking smack about bodybuilding as a methodology for conditioning boxers. Right. It's the wrong methodology.
Absolutely. What's the most challenging part of coaching boxers, and how do you tailor your approach?
Yeah, the most challenging part of coaching boxers, I'll approach it twofold. Acutely, the most challenging part is the psychological aspect of it.
Oh yeah.
You know, I know my psychology and I'm learning it, but that's different for every kid that comes through. Some kids need to be amped up. Some kids need to be calmed down. Some kids you need to have a gentle hand with. Some kids you need to be stern with. And it's always a moving target trying to figure that out. You know, I know boxing forward, backward, left, and right, and I'm continuing to learn every chance that I get, you know, but learning how to reach a kid, how to help them, how to get them hooked, and how to get them working hard is tough.
And you don't know what he's coming from.
I definitely don't know what he's coming
like
from.
his home life, a lot of times too, family support matters so much. What his environment's like when he's not in the gym, him or her, you know.
Yeah.
Character, coachability, all that stuff. Yeah, a lot of factors.
So acutely, it's hard to reach a kid, and more broadly, you know, it's tough to always give a kid and give the team everything you got. Because, you know, kids come and go, especially in Burlington, you know, where we have our gym, Vermont. It's a college town. So a lot of these kids, you got them for a couple years, and then they move on to bigger, better things. You never want to hold a kid back. You want them to move on to bigger, better things. But it's tough. You got a kid who's a killer, and he looks good, and he's with you for 4 years, and you get him a bunch of fights, and things are looking sharp, and then he's somebody else's athlete after that. He goes down to Boston, or he goes to New York, or he travels for a job.
Or he just closes the book.
Yeah, or he just closes the book. Together, you know, absolutely. So that's the thing that's tough. It's tough to always want to give that kid, and I've been good at it. You know, I've been coaching full time now for 11 years. You know, and I haven't burned out yet. But I see those old grouchy coaches that are mean to everybody, and I understand why they are the way they are.
We'll be talking the one soon. So you were touching earlier, Anthony, on, you know, you felt like you had to unlearn a lot of things that you learned in college.
Yeah.
So how, in your view, how has strength and conditioning in boxing evolved over the course of your coaching career?
For me, or like the industry?
Just in your opinion, what would you've observed in the industry? Do you find it's evolved even, or has your opinion on it evolved?
I think that it has evolved with what's trendy as time goes on. You know, you can see. You look at Holyfield back in the day. You know, he's maybe he's not the best example. You know, he's doing bodybuilding style stuff to gain that weight because that's what was popular then. You know what I mean? Yeah. And again, you know, I think I don't remember whose quote this is, but somebody said, you know, most combat athletes succeed in spite of their strength and conditioning, not because of it.
Right.
You know, I think a lot of combat athletes, you know, a lot of their strength and conditioning is kind of like steers them away from what would be the best path. And they're still growing, but they're kind of like growing on an arc, you know, and they're becoming good athletes, but maybe not necessarily in a way that would be optimal for boxing. Something that I've really realized as time has gone on, and I'm sure you've realized this too, you know, there is no substitution for just time in the game. You know, so like for me, as time has gone on, and as I look at the guys that have had success as their careers have been long, these are guys that really, really focus on their road work, their mobility, their back, shoulder, and neck and hand health. And these are all things that like aren't glamorous. Like it's not fun. These aren't like big, heavy squats and giant plyometric jumps and all that stuff. You know, but like focusing on your longevity, just taking care of the vehicle that plies these skills, I think is the real way that you should focus on your boxing career. If I could travel through time, and God, I wish I could, you know, go back to when I was like 12, 13, 14 years old and I was just getting into this. If I could just tell myself to like, do your road work, do your jump rope, take care of your shoulders, do your push-ups, do your pull-ups, do the rice bucket, do your neck stretches. Like I would be in so much of a better place. I wasted my time doing bodybuilding and powerlifting stuff for far too long when I was younger.
It's interesting though, because that's something I see a lot of times when I go around and when I travel to do some of these interviews and I look at some of the members, like youth and fighters in the gyms, I don't see too many put in time just skipping rope anymore. Well, I'm like, skip rope, that was such a staple in boxing training before as a warm-up or cool-down. That's how you develop your rhythm, your coordination, and like your footwork, everything. And then even just practice, like when guys are shadow boxing, just, they're not looking in the mirror, they're not watching themselves, or they're talking, socializing while they're shadow boxing. That's their social time. It's like, then you ever see Andre Ward shadow box?
I love watching.
He's my favorite guy. So he's my favorite modern guy to watch shadow boxing. Oh, it's He's so smooth. It's an art. The way he shadow boxes is an art. Terrence Crawford too is a great shadow boxer. But you get some guys with shadow box that are just like man, they're going through the mode. They're not working on nothing.
Yeah.
You know.
I tell my guys, because I make my guys at the start of every class, they do 10 minutes of shadow boxing uninterrupted. That's it. Just focus for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That's it. Make yourself do it. My favorite workout to do is just 15 rounds of shadow boxing. Yeah. That's it. Just don't even think about anything else. Just shadow box. Nice and easy. And I always know that a guy's really into the shadow boxing when he's like fainting.
Yeah.
If he's fainting, you know that he's trying to deceive the guy in front of him. He's trying to set him up. He's trying to trick him. Fainting, isn't an advanced thing. It's not a bug. It's a feature. Yeah. It's something you should be doing to dress up all your entries. You should never go in there naked. You got to dress it up.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Even getting back to strength and conditioning, let's say 40 years ago, guys were like the Leonard Hearns, like the Fab Four era, Salvador Sanchez, all those guys. Okay,
so good.
But those guys, what a lot of those guys had, they could box on the balls of their feet. And they were getting for 15 rounds.
Yep.
And they were getting by on endurance training, long distance running, calisthenics, and boxing training. And somehow today, the boxers today they haven't. There's not a fighter that's more athletic or more proficient than Sugar Ray Leonard or Roy Jones.
Undeniable.
And that's more than 30 years ago now. Okay, those guys, and there's been nobody that's been better than them since. But somehow, in terms of advancement in sports science and everything else, we still have guys today that are afraid to fight 12 rounds as hard as the old school boxers fought 15 rounds back then.
That's right.
The science doesn't add up.
Yeah, I tell my guys that there are three big components to your conditioning for a boxing fight. The first one is you're just like rote aerobic attributes. That's fine. You do your road work, you do your bag work and your Tabatas and all that stuff. That's the actual like physical capacity of your body. That's important, The second one is movement efficiency. I tell my guys all the time, I say, if you're not getting 40 to 60 rounds a weekend of boxing work, you're not going to have the movement efficiency with your body to be able to carry it as long as you need to.
It's a skill sport.
It's a skill sport. First and foremost, second and third.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is learning to relax. Like because you've been doing this a long time. I can be I'm sure I was in worse shape than that guy last night, But again, you can see, I'm not using energy when I don't have to. I'm fainting. I'm getting him to punch at nothing. I'm getting him nervous.
Experience.
I'm making him feel that pressure without using the energy until the moment's right. And that's really important. You got to pick your moments. My favorite two fighters are three. Let's go three. My favorite three fighters are Bernard Hopkins, James Toney, and old George Foreman. And all of those guys know how to just relax. They're not forcing anything. They're not forcing anything. They're nice and relaxed. They're always in charge, even if things aren't going their way.
But that's confidence too.
Yep.
Like the reason why some fighters can stay so composed and relaxed under pressure because they believe in themselves.
Yeah.
That's a whole.
And that belief comes from your conditioning.
Yes.
And your skill.
You got it.
I go into every single fight, every single spar, every single thing I ever do, and whether it's true or not, my wife always tells me, and I always say, I'm smarter than this guy. It doesn't matter. He might be faster than me, bigger than me, stronger than me, more conditioned than me. But like in my mind, whether it's true or not, I always tell myself, I'm smarter than this guy. He doesn't know as much as me. You can outwork me, but I'm not going to let you. I'm not going to let you take that confidence from me, even in a loss.
What changes do you see coming in boxing's training and competition landscape?
Honestly, I think that people are starting to see it. I think for the first time you're only 2 years older than me, so for the first time in our life, I think boxing's on the upswing from a skill standpoint, I think there was this like dark age for a long time in like the 90s and the early 2000s where guys were really like hidden. They didn't want to share their secrets, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like now in the age of the internet, and especially with these young kids, they got no etiquette when it comes to sparring and training. They film everything, they put it out there, which I don't like.
No,
I think you should film your sparring, you should tape study it, but like I hate it when a kid chops up, you work a guy visiting your gym for 4 rounds and he finds the 20 seconds that he looked good and he puts it online. That's okay. But because of that, there is this giant dissemination of information. You know, I think guys are starting to recognize, they're starting to see the skills, you know, and you're seeing a lot of those regional styles dissolve a little bit because of that. Like it used to be really clear. There was like a West Coast style, there's a Mexican style, there's a European style, you know, and you're seeing that kind of shift a little bit. You look at guys like Triple G, you know, who like they were raised in that like Soviet style development system, but that's not how they fight. And a lot of this is just about this dissemination of information. It's all out there now. So I think guys are seeing, oh, wow, I can see the principles on display instead of just the techniques that my local coach teaches me.
Well, I think with Triple G too, he still had some elements from that Soviet system.
For sure.
Like he had that ramrod jab.
Beautiful.
And the way he held his guard up in it. But when he started working with Abel Sanchez, he had some of that influence where he learned how to work in the pocket.
Yeah, but he learned how to plant his feet too, when it was appropriate to plant his feet and be aggressive. You
Absolutely.
know, he gave up that bounciness, that like amateur bounciness for stability.
Correct.
And you saw me last night working on that a little bit too. I'm trying to keep my feet under me. I even got those goofy shoes, so I'm trying.
What guidance would you give to anyone out there that would be looking to follow in your footsteps?
Do it. Do it. I can't tell you how many people told me I couldn't do it. And they were all so wrong. I had people who told me, they were like, you could never be a pro boxer. They're like, you're not athletic enough. When I was like a teenager, you know, unless you're already like a 1% speed, 1% power, 1% durability, you'll never be able to make it. But, you know, I've been so blessed over the years to work with so many good, talented fighters, you know. I had such a misunderstanding of the sport when I was young, that it was like Olympic sprinting or something, that it was an attribute sport.
Right.
You know, when I was young, you know, I thought that it was the guy who's stronger, faster, bigger, more conditioned wins the fight. That's not always the case, you know. And I would say do it. I would say you have to be passionate about it. You have to be voracious about it. You have to hunt for knowledge and information all the time. You're going to have times that are lean. My first year, thank God that my wife was working at the same time. My first year coaching full time, I made less than 10 grand. It was a rough year. But now we have a business, we have a house, we have 2 cars. I've paid off my student loans. And like all that's from running a boxing gym and running a boxing program, you know? Yeah. Like we've grown it. Just do it. That's the thing. It's going to be hard. I know it's going to be hard, just like a fight. But like you have to do it, and you have to believe in yourself. Yeah, that's the biggest thing.
Amazing. Yeah, because no one else is coming to save you.
No one else is coming to save you. That's the important thing. Like, yeah, you got to believe in yourself, and you also got to believe that you're going to do it. You know, and then you got to do the work. You got to make it happen. You know?
Do you find there's a line when you're coaching your athletes? How do you balance physical conditioning with mental toughness with your fighters? Because for instance, like we had an athlete last night. His physical condition was great. I think it was our main event last night. I know his physical condition was on par because I seen him put the work in the gym.
Yes.
But now he's got the jitters, the nerves before his fight, that pre-fight anxiety.
That's one of those big 3 we talked about.
He's gassing himself out for nothing in that dressing room pace, and I had a challenge to calm him down and get him to regulate and concentrate, and remind him, you trained so hard, you're in fighting shape. But he was. You wouldn't know that sometimes, you know, in certain moments when he was going out there because his mind is playing tricks on him. So how do you find that balance when you're coaching your fighters?
That's what you and me were talking about before the cameras even started rolling. You know, I was saying that psychological component of it is really, really tough. I think for me, a lot of it comes from, you know, I try to educate my guys positionally. I try to make my guys do a bunch of defense rounds. You know, I tell my guys on my team, I say, your defense rounds are the spine, the skeleton of all of your boxing training. You know, probably 25% of what we do in our gym are pure defense rounds. So that a guy has the confidence that even if things aren't going your way, you can keep yourself safe, which gives them the confidence to try, to push, so that they know that like, okay, so this isn't working. So what? I can keep myself safe. I'll live. I'll learn to fight another day. You know, Bob used to say, I know I reference him a lot, but he's the one of the best guys I've ever worked with.
For context, Bob was my comment for a long time. I've known him since my youth. Yeah. Great man. Big influence in my career.
Yeah, Bob Miller, legendary cut man and corner man. Yeah. But you know, Bob used to say, you know, amateur is for making all your mistakes. Yeah. You know, amateur is where you make all your mistakes, where you learn so that you can be a perfect pro when it comes time to go pro. So like, I know that really alleviated me. I got a funny story about Bob. You'll appreciate this. So I went to the pros camp. When I went to the pros camp, I had already been boxing for like 10 years. Yeah. And my first 6 months at the pros camp was just me getting shit kicked by everybody at the pros camp. I had to come to terms with the fact that I'd been boxing for a long time, but I was a medium-sized fish in a very small pond.
Yeah.
And I came here and I'm getting beaten up by like 14-year-old kids and 120-pound women, and just like, it was a mess, you know. I was getting lit up by everybody, you know. I drove home from the pros camp after sparring so many days just like crying in my car. Being like, oh my God, I put so much time into this thing and I still suck at it, you know? And every time Bob would ask me, he'd be like, hey, I got to fight this weekend. You want to get on it? I'd be like, oh no, I tweaked my neck. And I'd be like, oh no, I hurt my ankle. Oh, my shoulder's hurting. And one day, you know, Bob asked me if I wanted to get on an event. And I said, oh no, I made some excuse. And Bob put his hand on my shoulder and he said, hey, you know, if you want to call yourself a fighter, you got to fight. And he just walked away. And I was like, damn, you know, and I thought about it and I told him, I said, I'm going to get on it. You know, I'm going to get on the event. And when I was at Bob's, I had 8 fights and I won all 8 of them, which was great, you know, because Bob took the pressure off me. He said, nobody cares if you win or lose at the amateur level. Just go out there and box. Go out there and box and go out there and learn. He said, you're never going to be any good just getting stale in the gym.
Yeah.
Like the only way that you actually test yourself is by fighting. That's why I'm still fighting as a coach. You know, there's this wonderful book I love. If you haven't read it, you should.
Okay.
It's called The Art of Boxing.
My dad's got it.
Oh, dude.
I haven't read it yet, but I'm pretty sure he has
It is the most fun book about boxing I've ever read. And, you know, something he talks about in there is that, like, sparring is not fighting. It's not fighting. You know, the only thing that's fighting is fighting, which means the only way that you can learn if your true understanding of the sport is correct is if you're fighting. You know, and that's what got me back into competing after 7 years away from the sport, you know, coaching and running the gym. I read that book, and that book is the one reason I was like, shoot, I'm sitting here on the sidelines, and I could feel it when I got back into it, that like my mindset had become very clean, very sterile, very clinical. This is what boxing is. Bop, bop, step left, bop, bop, step right. And I remember my first fight back in there with some 20-year-old kid, you know, I'm 33, you know, and I'm boxing his ears off, but it didn't matter because it's not sparring, it's a fight. He had that look in his eye and he wanted to kill me. I couldn't demoralize him like you can in sparring. I was like, I had to put him away or he was going to put me away. And like, it really made me realize that like, there is so much more to this than just the sporty positional boxing. It's half boxing and it's half fight. It's half sport and it's half fight. And if you're all fight, you're going to lose. And if you're all boxing, you're going to lose. Yeah. But if you don't learn that balance, you'll never be any good.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, that Jekyll and Hyde.
That Jekyll and Hyde is tough, man. That yin and that yang is tough.
Absolutely.
You know? Yeah.
Final question I got for you, Anthony.
Please.
When it's all said and done, how do you hope to be remembered in the boxing community?
I want to be remembered as the dude who loved this sport more than anybody else. That's what I want. I love this sport. I wake up in the morning, I watch boxing. I coach boxing 12 hours all day long, and then I go home and I watch boxing. I fight every chance that I get. I try to watch that tape and study. I watch all the old school greats. You know, I love Ezzard Charles and Jersey Joe Wolcott and Joe Lewis. Like, these guys are all amazing
Archie
guys.
Moore.
You know, I love those old school. Archie Moore should have been on that list. What I just do, you know.
See, you're in for the actual biggest fight in your
right.
life right now because that goal you got to.
Yeah.
I also got the same goal
that's
as you.
perfect. Good. Well, good. We got a nice frenemy relationship. I don't know. I just love this sport. You know, that's you know, I've broken my hands in the double digits. You know, I've had surgery on my face twice. I've had surgery on my hands twice. You know, my shoulders are shot. I got herniated discs in my back. My meniscus is all goofed up. The list goes on and on and on. You know, the book was written for a long time on I don't think I'm going to be able to go pro. I think smaller gloves and longer fights are not the answer for a guy who's as injury prone as me. But I love the sport enough and I want to keep testing myself, you know, and I want to do it as long as I can. That's the idea. I want, when a kid comes to me, whether it's on the YouTube channel or whether it's in person, and he has a question for me, I always want to have an answer to that question. I never want to be bullshitting the kid. I never want to brush him off. And I never want to say, I don't know. I am voracious for as much knowledge about this sport as I can get. That's what I want to be remembered for.
Amazing message, Anthony. Thanks for having me, brother.
Tony,
Good to see you again,
you're the
man.
man. Thank you so much,
you,
brother. I appreciate you.
Before we log off, though, How can people follow you? How can they follow
Check out my YouTube channel, Bambara Boxing. Please, all that jazz. Like, subscribe, whatever. Check it out. See our journey on my road to get 100 fights and learn as much as I can about this sport. My eventual goal to be the greatest Masters Division fighter the United States and maybe Canada has ever seen, and learn from all of our technical videos, I really appreciate the support. I'm so blessed that somebody as high level as Tony would even do this interview with me. It's so cool,
I love it because you showed your bones and proved your metal to me over the years at
Thank
Bob's.
you, my man.
Yeah.
Thank you, my man.
I also think it's incredible how you managed to take all the hair off your head and put it on your face.
That's right. This is my look. This is my
Dedication.
look. This is my look. Thank you very much. Tony, I appreciate you.
Okay, brother.